I've been showcasing a lot more locomotives on this channel, and I've been working on a way to compare these locomotives. And today, I'm unveiling the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet is a series of tests that show what a locomotive can do. I needed to design a series of tests that showed how capable a locomotive is. I wanted to test endurance, how well it went across turnouts, how well it handled curves, and its ability to climb a grade. And I wanted all of these tests combined into a single space that I could run a locomotive through. I had some scrap sheets of plywood laying around from a previous DIY home project, and I figured, hey, let's use those. I then ordered some Atlas Code 80 set track. I ordered the starter set track, and then I ordered some straights and some 19, 11, and 9 3/4 inch radius turns. I began to lay everything out the way that I wanted it. The first was a loop with an 11-inch radius on the ends. Next was 3 consecutive turnouts that alternate diverging directions. I then created a series of S-turns with varying radii, the widest being 19 inches, the narrowest being at 9 3/4 inches. Then I finally cut a 2-foot board and put some track on it. I then designed and 3D printed a little step that represented from 1% to 10% based on 2 feet. That way I could just raise it up and change the percentage. I then grabbed my laser engraver and labeled everything. Okay, let's go over what the tests are and what the scoring will be. For this, I brought out the first in-scale locomotive I purchased when starting this channel, an old Bachmann Alco RS3. There are 4 tests in total. 3 of the tests are worth 10 points and 1 of the tests is worth 20 points. The endurance test is worth 20 points because before any of these other things, I want to make sure that the locomotive is going to run for a good long time on a loop of track, just running. So this will be an 8-hour endurance test that I'll run overnight on these locomotives. The second test is the turnout test. This is traversing 3 turnouts back to back to back in a line. If the locomotive can do it, then that is the first 5 points of the 10. Then the locomotive will go across the turnout in the trailing point's direction with the turnouts misaligned intentionally. If it crosses them by forcing them, then it gets the remaining 5 points. The S-turn test has 4 total tests. The first 3 are S-turn tests with 19-inch, 11-inch, and 9 3/4 inches. The locomotive will take the S-turns with 1 car that has a truck-mounted coupler. If there is no derailment, then it passes. If the locomotive passes all 3, then it moves on to what I call the wiggle track for an additional point. The wiggle track is simply a bunch of 9 3/4 pieces going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, making the train looking like it's wiggle. Now, I know that some locomotives, especially some steamers, will fail the wiggle track test simply because of the wheel arrangement and their length. So I only made this test worth 1 point. Finally, I have the hill start test. The hill start test will test the locomotive's ability to start on a hill from a 1% to a 10% grade. 5 points for 10% with no cars and 5 points for 10% with 1 car. Each percent removes a half a point from each of the 5 points. So let's say you're doing a test with 1 car and the train can only do the hill start up to 7%. That's 3% below 10%, and that would be 1.5 points off, so you would get 3.5 of the 5 points. If you've been keeping track, you know that that is 50 points total. A perfect score on the Gauntlet is a 50. Now, you may be asking yourself, okay, Jimmy, what does this test mean to measure? Well, for one, it's not meant to measure which locomotive is the best and which one is the worst. You could have the best big boy, but it's probably not going to get a perfect score no matter what. I'm pretty sure it's going to fail the wiggle track test, but I'm still going to test it. What I aim to measure is how easy a locomotive is to use. Think of it in a way of the car, plane, and ship models that have skill levels of 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth for difficulty. A high Gauntlet score means the locomotive is pretty easy to use and a beginner should feel comfortable. The lower the Gauntlet score, the more considerations need to be put into layout construction, rolling stock, consisting, etc. Everyone knows that long articulated locomotives need more considerations when it comes to turns and things like that versus short diesels. Now, I'm planning on giving all of my locomotives a Gauntlet score, and every locomotive I get will also get a Gauntlet score as well, and that'll be part of the video when I show it. It's going to take me about 2 weeks to run every locomotive through the Gauntlet, so be on the lookout for that video in the next couple of weeks. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you really enjoy this. I think this is going to be a lot of fun to do. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, and happy railroading.